Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded. We're making modern love simple. Get ready to decode your love life. Brought to you by Speed Mingle.
You know, there is this incredibly heavy, almost suffocating exhaustion just hanging over everyone right now.
Oh, completely. It's palpable.
Yeah, I feel it, you probably feel it, and it really seems to be the defining undercurrent of our entire social ecosystem today.
It really is.
It's this deep, bone-weary burnout, you know? And it comes from trying to project this perfectly curated, flawless version of yourself out into the world. Like 24 hours a day.
Right, the constant performance of it all.
Exactly. And nowhere is that exhaustion more obvious or honestly more soul-crushing than when you are looking for love.
Oh, absolutely.
If you, the listener, has spent any time swiping over the last decade, you know the exact flavor of fatigue I'm talking about. You're asked to condense your entire messy, complex human existence into, like, 3 witty prompts.
3 prompts and maybe a handful of perfectly lit photos.
Right. Aesthetically pleasing photos just to prove you are a viable candidate for intimacy. It feels way less like romance and more like, I don't know, defending a dissertation on your own marketability.
It is the absolute definition of exhausting.
Right.
We've essentially turned human connection into a relentless corporate networking event.
Yes, a networking event, exactly.
People have spent the last 10 years treating first dates like high-stakes job interviews. And the goal isn't actually to get to know the other person.
Right, it's to pitch yourself.
Exactly. It's to present this highly sanitized, boardroom-ready version of yourself. You sit across from someone and quietly hide all your actual human eccentricities.
You just bury them.
You bury your weird anxieties, your obscure hobbies, all of it. You bury them deep until, like, maybe month 6.
Hoping they're trapped by then.
Right. Hoping that by the time the real you leaks out, the other person is just too invested to leave.
That corporate networking feel is the exact paradigm that is actively collapsing right now, which is the entire mission of our deep dive today.
It really is falling apart.
We are looking at this wildly shifted landscape of 21st century romance. We're specifically focusing on how Generation Z is executing this aggressive, almost scorched earth pivot away from that performative perfection.
They're entirely done with the polished aesthetic.
Totally done. So today, we're unpacking how a viral pop lyric birthed a massive cultural philosophy. We'll look at what it actually takes to forge intimacy in a post-filter world, and we're going to figure out whether these new, radically honest dating trends are genuinely healthy.
Or if they might just be a clever new mask.
Right. Hiding deeper, darker relationship anxiety.
Exactly. And to understand the mechanics of this shift, we are pulling together some fascinating threads for you today. We have a bedrock of rigorous academic sociology.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah, specifically historical research from the annual reviews focusing on young adult relationship trajectories.
Awesome.
But we are layering that with a massive amount of behavioral data coming straight from the platforms where this is actually happening, like Match Group, Viber, and Plenty of Fish.
Getting the real numbers.
Right. And to translate what is happening on the ground, we are digging into the specific, highly codified language people are using right now. So we're pulling from cultural deep dives in The Guardian, 34th Street, and Times Life.
Synthesizing all of that research honestly brought me this immense sense of relief.
Really? How so?
Because the through line in all this data is that we can finally, thankfully, drop the polished LinkedIn-style dating bios.
Oh, thank.
The era of pretending you spend every weekend hiking at sunrise is officially over.
Nobody actually does that anyway.
Right. So, for you listening, I invite you to just sit back, mentally drap whatever performative mask you've been wearing today, and enjoy a really unfiltered look at how we are trying to find each other in the dark.
It's a great way to frame it.
But, you know, to really grasp the magnitude of this current rebellion, we have to look backward first. We need to talk about the old script.
The historical baseline.
Exactly.
That historical baseline is crucial because without it, the current landscape just looks like absolute chaos.
Yeah.
If we look at the sociological data from the mid-20th century in the United States, the societal script for young adulthood was not just rigid. It was virtually mandatory.
Like you had no choice.
None. It was a highly standardized timeline, perfectly encapsulated by that old playground rhyme, you know? First comes love, Then comes marriage.
Then comes a baby in a baby carriage.
Exactly. That wasn't just the song, it was a literal societal mandate.
It was a checklist.
Yeah.
And you didn't deviate from it without facing intense social ostracization.
The numbers from that era are genuinely striking when you look at them through a modern lens. Between 1947 and 1967, the median age for a first marriage was 20.3 years old for women.
Wow, 20.3.
And 22.9 years old for men.
That is just wild to think about.
And parenthood almost universally followed within 2 to 3 years of that wedding date. There was a nearly lockstep demographic movement out of the parental home directly into a marriage and immediately into raising children.
So no gap at all.
Virtually no gap for independent adulthood, no.
20.3 years old. I want you, the listener, to just pause and think about yourself at 20 years old.
Oh.
Right. The idea of having my entire life, my permanent trajectory, locked into place at that age is completely paralyzing to me now.
Same.
I mean, I didn't even know what kind of laundry detergent I liked at 20, let alone who I want to bind my legal and financial existence to for the next 50 years.
It's a terrifying thought now.
It really is. But you contrast that mid-century data with where we are now. By 2017, the average age for a first marriage jumped to 27.4 for women and nearly 30 for men.
That is a massive demographic shift.
A seismic shift in baseline human behavior, and it happened in a relatively tiny window of human history. What is actually driving that massive delay?
Well, it is a combination of two massive structural forces. We're looking at economic restructuring and cultural evolution. Let's tackle the economics first.
Okay, lay it on me.
That mid-century rapid-fire timeline was propped up by a very specific post-war economic reality that allowed for a breadwinner homemaker model.
Right, the classic single-income family.
Exactly. A young adult, usually male, could enter the workforce right out of high school with a factory or manufacturing job and make a wage sufficient to support a spouse, a home, and children.
You could buy a house on a single factory salary.
You could. But as we shifted globally into a polarized, knowledge-based economy, that rapid financial independence became completely impossible for the vast majority of people.
Yeah, the manufacturing jobs moved offshore, the tech and finance sectors demanded specialized degrees, and the barrier to entry for the middle class just skyrocketed.
Right. Suddenly, young adults needed much more time, significantly more education, and often multiple career pivots just to establish basic financial autonomy.
You simply cannot afford the baby carriage at 20 anymore.
Not when you were burdened with student debt and entering an entry-level job market that barely covers rent. The economic reality forcibly wedged a decade-long gap into the timeline between adolescence and marriage.
So the economy shattered the old timeline by force. It wasn't really a choice initially.
Initially, no.
But the way people are behaving in that newly created decade isn't just about saving money, is it? There is a deeply psychological component to how people are spending their 20s now.
Absolutely. And that's the second, perhaps more profound driver, which is entirely cultural. Sociologists term it the rise of expressive individualism.
Expressive individualism.
This is a fundamental shift in our cultural ethos. Expressive individualism is the philosophy that prioritizes emotional satisfaction, self-discovery, self-development, and personal happiness above conforming to familial expectations or community obligations.
That is a massive, massive pivot from the mid-century mindset.
It completely inverts the purpose of a relationship. In the 1950s, marriage was largely viewed as an institution you entered to fulfill a societal role.
Right, to stabilize the community, to produce the next generation, to do your duty, basically.
Exactly. Today, under the framework of expressive individualism, a relationship is expected to provide profound personal meaning and psychological growth.
It has to serve the individual.
Yes. And if a romantic partnership no longer fits your personal needs, or if it stifles your authentic self in any way, it is viewed as inherently toxic or inauthentic.
So you have a society where young adults are handed this decade-long gap, and they are utilizing that time to ruthlessly explore their own personal happiness.
Yeah.
Completely free from the old institutional constraints.
That's exactly it.
I'm trying to synthesize this because the contrast is wild.
Yeah.
Looking at the mid-century model, it operated almost exactly like a factory assembly line.
That's a good way to put it.
Right. It was standardized, it was highly sequential, and it was entirely focused on a specific, tangible output. You get married to produce the household, you produce the children, you maintain the social order.
It's very mechanical.
But the modern dating landscape we are in right now operates way more like a Silicon Valley startup.
Oh, I like that.
It is completely focused on individual disruption.
Yeah.
You are expected to constantly pivot, rebrand yourself, discover your core identity, and above all, prioritize vibe alignment over long-term institutional stability.
That is a brilliant analogy. The focus truly shifted from collective stability to individual optimization.
But if the assembly line is permanently shut down and that old rigid script is completely gone, we are left entirely to our own devices for a decade or more of young adulthood. And human beings do not do well in a vacuum.
We really don't.
So if there are no rules, what fills the void?
Well, the immediate reaction to that void, which dominated the 2010s, was an attempt to control the narrative through hyper-curation.
The dreaded dating apps.
Exactly. That is the millennial era of the dating app, the era of the highly polished, meticulously edited profile. Without a societal script telling you who to marry, you had to literally market yourself to the masses to find a match.
It's a personal PR campaign.
But as we see in the behavioral data across the board, that endless pursuit of curated perfection led directly to a psychological wall. The dating app fatigue became critical.
I want to bring this directly to the listener for a second. Think about your own timeline and the pressures you've navigated. Have you felt the ghost of that old assembly line script whispering in your ear, telling you that you are falling behind because you aren't married with a mortgage by 28?
It's a very common feeling.
Or conversely, have you felt the dizzying, sometimes completely paralyzing freedom of this new, highly individualized path where you are entirely responsible for engineering your own happiness from scratch?
It's a heavy burden.
It is, because this collective exhaustion with the startup-style, highly marketed dating world has triggered a massive reactionary rebellion. And that rebellion is what we are really here to decode today. We are watching the death of the curated aesthetic and entering the defining trend of the late 2020s.
And that trend, the one that has completely hijacked the digital dating landscape, social media, and just how we talk about modern intimacy in general, is freak matching.
Freak matching. I find this concept so deeply fascinating. Let's trace the genesis of it, because it is a perfect case study in how culture is manufactured in real time today.
It really is.
It didn't come from a sociologist or a dating app marketing team. It started in April 2024 with the R&B singer Tinashe. She released a summer track called Nasty, and it featured this incredibly infectious earworm of a lyric. Is somebody going to match my freak?
Such a catchy line.
Now, obviously, the original context of the song, she was talking about sexual stamina and bedroom compatibility. It had a very explicit, suggestive undertone.
It did, yes. But the internet immediately stripped it of that specific context and completely transformed its meaning.
As the internet does.
Right. Young adults took a lyric about physical intimacy and morphed it into a surprisingly wholesome, all-encompassing metric for zero-mask, real-life compatibility.
The examples of what matching a freak actually looks like in practice are so incredibly specific and evocative. You look at the cultural glossaries from The Guardian or the viral trends, and the feeds were just flooded with hyper-niche scenarios.
What were some of your favorites?
Okay, so people were posting things like, matching my freak means eating an entire family-sized bag of dill pickle chips in bed while intensely analyzing a 4-hour true crime documentary at 2 a.m.
That is so specific.
Or, matching my freak is having a dedicated, highly dramatic 15-minute breakdown over a minor inconvenience, only to immediately wipe your tears and go get an iced coffee like nothing happened.
That one is very relatable. The ones that stand out to me emphasize a shared tolerance for complete inaction.
Oh, like what?
For instance, matching my freak means sitting in complete unbroken silence in the same room for 6 straight hours while we work on completely separate hyperfixation projects.
Oh, parallel play.
Exactly. Or eating cold leftover takeout in bed while watching a deeply niche YouTube video essay on medieval European architecture and having your partner simply turn to you and say, pass the fork.
Pass the fork. It sounds like a joke, but that is the ultimate green flag right there.
It really is.
It's the ultimate validation. But let's dig underneath the humor of these viral posts. What is the psychological driver here? Why is the concept of finding someone to match your hyper-specific flavor of weirdness resonating so profoundly with millions of people?
Well, we can look at the framework provided by Dr. Elena Torres, a relationship strategist we came across in the research. She points out that freak matching is wildly misunderstood by older generations.
How so?
They assume it means being reckless or sexually adventurous, but in reality, it is entirely about the luxury of not having to edit yourself.
Ah, right.
It is a direct, visceral rebellion against that job interview era of dating we just discussed. For years, the conventional wisdom was to hide your eccentricities, hide your bizarre sleep schedules, your intense nerdy hobbies, and your emotional fluctuations until you had securely locked down the relationship.
Freak matching inverts that timeline entirely.
It does. It pulls all of your oddities to the very front of the interaction. It is a demand to have your unvarnished, authentic self accepted on day one without apology.
What's equally fascinating is how quickly this bled outside the boundaries of romance.
Oh, very quickly. The concept of freak matching is now deeply platonic as well.
Really?
Yeah. People are applying this metric to finding best friends, roommates, and even gym partners. It is no longer just about romantic compatibility. It is about finding someone who matches your precise baseline social energy, regardless of the relationship title.
It's the search for a zero judgment zone in a highly judgmental world.
Exactly.
I want to pull the lens back and speculate on the broader technological environment here, because I don't think this trend happens in a vacuum. Think about what it actually means to navigate your 20s right now.
It's a completely different landscape.
We are living in a society completely saturated by AI-generated content. We use digital filters that literally alter the bone structure of our faces in real time on video calls.
It's terrifying, honestly.
And we have algorithms curating every single piece of information we consume. Add to that the residual psychological trauma of intense pandemic isolation. When your entire external world feels synthetic, manipulated, and heavily filtered, actual, genuine human oddity becomes a premium commodity.
It becomes incredibly valuable.
Right. I suspect young adults are becoming fiercely protective of their personal peace and their unedited quirks because their weirdness is one of the only verifiably real things they have left.
That is a very sharp sociological read. Dr. Maya Lin, who studies digital relationships, outlines a very similar thesis. Millennials spent a decade perfecting the curated aesthetic, presenting a flawless, aspirational version of their lives.
And Gen Z watched that happen.
Yes, and they realized that maintaining an idealized personal brand 24/7 leads to severe psychological burnout. Freak matching acts as a necessary antidote to a synthetic world. It is a way of saying, I refuse to be a brand. I am a messy human.
I have a theory about this that takes it a step further. I think freak matching is, at its absolute core, the ultimate interpersonal efficiency hack.
Oh, how do you mean?
Think about the mechanics of it. If you lead with your most bizarre, unhinged traits on the very first date, if you put right in your bio that you require 4-hour silent reading sessions on Sundays, or that you are intensely passionate about competitive dog grooming, you instantly filter out anyone who would drain your emotional energy trying to change you.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's like slapping a massive neon warning label on your forehead that actually functions as a highly calibrated magnet for the exact right person. You stop wasting time on polite small talk with people who will ultimately find you exhausting.
And the platform data absolutely supports your efficiency theory. By polarizing your audience, being extremely specific about who you are, you optimize for genuine connection.
Right.
You are actively, intentionally turning away the vast majority of wrong matches to efficiently locate the statistical outlier who perfectly aligns with your specific brand of chaos.
Okay, so if the traditional high-stakes candlelit dinner date is a terrible mechanism for figuring out if someone matches your freak, what actually replaces it?
Yeah.
If you're trying to actively test someone's tolerance for your weirdness, where do you take them?
This is where we look at the new behavioral tactics emerging in this unfiltered era. The research highlights a massive pivot away from formal dating toward what sociologists are calling low-stakes micro-dates.
Micro-dates.
Yes. And one of the most prominent and frankly charming tactics is a concept called choremance.
Choremance, a portmanteau of chore and romance. I love it. Walk me through the mechanics of a choremance date.
It is the intentional bonding over the mundane reality of running daily errands. Instead of spending $80 on craft cocktails and spending 2 hours shouting over loud music at a dimly lit bar, you invite a potential partner to go to the grocery store with you on a Tuesday night.
Just hitting the aisles.
Or you ask them to tag along while you drop off dry cleaning or walk the dog.
I genuinely love the underlying logic of that.
The logic is airtight. It is a remarkably effective, low-stakes environment to test if you can actually tolerate each other in a state of everyday boredom.
The real test.
Right. It answers a fundamental question. Does our vibe align when we're doing absolutely nothing special? Can we navigate the fluorescent lights of a supermarket aisle and still find each other engaging?
If you can have a great time debating the merits of different brands of laundry detergent, and if they don't get annoyed when you take 10 minutes to pick out an avocado, you can probably survive a lot of life's actual substantial hurdles together.
Exactly. It strips away the performance of the dinner date and drops you right into the reality of a shared life.
But there is another tactic in the cultural data that caught my eye, and it feels like a reaction to the digital fatigue. It involves a very specific acronym, Say, Be Sing.
Yes, say best. This stands for See and Be Seen.
See and be seen.
Originating from the University of Pennsylvania student publication, 34th Street, this trend describes the act of going to a specific, highly trafficked public spot like a particular bench on a college campus, a specific section of a public library, or a neighborhood coffee shop.
Okay, so just going to a place.
But the key differentiator is your behavior once you arrive. You are not going there to look at your phone, you aren't listening to a podcast, and you aren't consuming digital content.
So no screens at all.
Right. You go there to physically linger, to actively people watch, and to intentionally manufacture a spontaneous offline sliding dose moment.
You are basically engineering a rom-com meet-cute. You are putting yourself in the physical path of serendipity.
Exactly. Natalia Castillo, who wrote about this for 34th Street, describes abiyesing as an art form rooted in yearning. You might strategically position yourself to casually run into a class crush, or you might just be offering yourself up to the universe, exposing yourself to the possibility of a random, unscripted interaction with a stranger.
It is all about physical presence.
Yes.
I think we need to contrast this with older internet behaviors to really understand why this is a shift. How does sabiessing differ from, say, a millennial visiting a place they saw on a viral TikTok?
Well, it is the behavioral antithesis of TikTok tourism. For years, the dominant trend was to visit a visually appealing, highly tagged location, snap a curated photo or a 10-second video to prove to your followers you were there, and then immediately leave.
The physical space was just a backdrop for digital content.
Exactly. Sabiessing is entirely about staying. It is about lingering in anonymity, absorbing the environment, and exposing yourself to the unpredictable friction of the real world.
Wow.
Sociologists view this obsession with sabiessing as a desperate reach for offline spontaneity, serving as a direct antidote to the heavily structured, hyper-scheduled, Google Calendar-dominated lives young adults are leading.
I completely understand the psychological need for that, but I have to push back on the framing here. Isn't sabiessing just a highly intellectualized, newly branded Gen Z term for going outside? I want the listener to really sit with this for a second. We have reached a point in our technological and social evolution where the simple act of sitting under a tree in a public park without staring at a glowing rectangle is considered a cutting-edge, novel dating strategy. We literally had to invent an acronym for the concept of being physically present in public.
Irony is glaring, absolutely. But I think that irony effectively highlights just how deeply isolated and digitally entrenched this demographic has become.
That's a fair point.
When your default state of existence is mediated by a screen, when your work, your socializing, and your entertainment all happen through a digital interface, going outside actually is a novel strategy. They're having to intentionally relearn, recontextualize, and rebrand the concept of physical serendipity because it no longer happens organically in their daily routines.
That is simultaneously hilarious and profoundly tragic.
It is.
We've had to gamify sitting on a bench. But speaking of tragic, I think we need to shift gears. Because up until this point in our deep dive, freak matching, chormance, and sabiessing in libraries all sound incredibly wholesome.
They do.
It paints a picture of a generation just earnestly looking for authentic connection. But the cultural glossaries, specifically a massive deep dive from The Guardian, reveal a much darker, far more chaotic, and frankly toxic side to this new dating lexicon.
It is not all shared true crime documentaries and sweet library glances.
Not at all. The modern dating landscape remains incredibly messy, and the terminology has rapidly evolved to capture and categorize that specific toxicity. Let's look at some of the darker vocabulary dominating the space right now. First up, we have a concept called grim keeping.
Grim keeping.
That sounds ominous. What is it?
It is the practice of building intimacy by bonding over mutual dislikes and shared hatreds. Instead of bonding over a shared passion for a band or a hobby, you bond over a shared vitriol for people who chew loudly, or people who use FaceTime on speaker in crowded public spaces, or slating people who follow a certain fashion trend.
So it's intimacy built on a foundation of being professional haters.
Essentially, yes. Dating coaches analyzing user behavior note that a massive percentage of young adults explicitly seek out mutual dislikes on profiles. Psychologically, humans often resonate much more powerfully and much faster with shared negativity than shared positivity.
Finding a mutual nemesis creates an instant alliance.
Exactly, albeit a shallow one. It's an us versus them mentality.
I can see how that happens. A shared annoyance bonds people incredibly fast. But then we get to a term in the research that I found genuinely upsetting because of the psychological manipulation involved. Explain the concept of shrekking.
Shrekking is a highly toxic, self-sabotaging trend where an individual actively and intentionally chooses to date down.
Date down.
They purposely seek out a partner they perceive as significantly less physically attractive, less successful, or less socially adept than themselves, an ogre, which is where the derogatory term originates.
Why on earth would someone intentionally sabotage their own desires like that?
It is entirely rooted in a defensive, fear-based psychology. The dater operates under the deeply flawed assumption that this lesser person will be so overwhelmed with gratitude to have landed such a catch that they will be intensely, blindly loyal.
Oh my God.
The dater believes they are engineering an asymmetrical power dynamic that makes it impossible for them to ever get their heart broken. They are trying to inoculate themselves against vulnerability.
It is a stunning level of insecurity masked as manipulation.
Yeah.
And what I found fascinating in the Guardian piece is that this strategy backfires spectacularly.
It really does.
They reported that people who engage in shrekking end up getting cheated on anyway. And the tragedy is it shatters them even more because the one variable they thought they had absolute control over, the power dynamic, was a total illusion. You cannot engineer loyalty by dating someone you secretly view with contempt.
No, you can't. They still have their own autonomy and ego.
It is a terrible, painful strategy. What other behaviors are we codifying in this toxic glossary?
There is a massive subdictionary of terms attempting to label every micro-betrayal in the digital age. There is monkey branching, which is a specific subgenre of micro-cheating.
Branching.
It describes someone who has a rebound partner already teed up, actively flirting and laying the groundwork before their current relationship has even officially ended.
Literally like Tarzan swinging through the jungle canopy. You never let go of the vine you are holding until you have a firm, secure grip on the next one.
That's the exact metaphor.
You just refuse to ever experience the free fall of actually being single.
Exactly. It's an inability to sit with the discomfort of being alone. Then we have a whole suite of terms related to digital presence after a breakup. There's orbiting. Oh, orbiting is the worst.
This is when a former partner or a romantic interest completely ceases all direct communication. They ghost you, but they stubbornly remain in your digital footprint like a phantom.
Just lurking.
They watch every single one of your Instagram stories. They view your TikToks. They might even occasionally like a post from 3 months ago. They keep you painfully, acutely aware of their constant surveillance without ever having the courage to send a direct message.
It is psychological warfare. You are trying to move on, and their little avatar just keeps popping up in your viewer list.
And the escalation of that is ghostlighting.
Ghostlighting.
This is when that person who ghosted you and perhaps orbited you for months suddenly pops back into your direct messages as if absolutely nothing happened.
Hey, how have you been?
Exactly. And when you confront them about the 6 months of silence, they gaslight you, claiming you were overreacting or that they were just really busy with work, making you question your own grip on reality. I want to stop and look at the underlying psychology of this entire glossary, because what is genuinely fascinating to me is the glaring contradiction at the heart of this generation's behavior.
The dichotomy is huge.
On one hand, you have a cohort demanding radical, unvarnished authenticity through freak matching. They want zero masks, absolute truth day one.
Right.
But on the exact same hand, they have generated this massive, deeply cynical, highly intellectualized glossary of terms to describe every single tiny, cowardly, negative micro-interaction. Why this obsession with labeling every bad behavior?
It comes down to a pervasive underlying anxiety and a desperate, almost primal need for control. The modern dating landscape is unprecedentedly messy and lacks any formal structure.
Like we said, the assembly line is gone.
Right. When you feel completely overwhelmed by a lack of societal rules, you attempt to regain a sense of control by meticulously categorizing the chaos. By giving a hurtful behavior a clinical-sounding name like orbiting or monkey branching, you strip away some of its power to cause you acute emotional pain.
It softens the blow.
You can point to the behavior and say to your friends, I know exactly what this is. It's a recognized trend. I am not uniquely unlovable. I am just a victim of a sociological pattern.
It intellectualizes the heartbreak.
Yeah.
But I really want to challenge this hyper-categorization.
Okay, go for it.
Are we over-pathologizing completely normal, albeit unpleasant, human messiness? Human beings have been messy, cowardly, selfish, and avoidant in romantic relationships since the dawn of time.
Sure.
People have always kept a rebound on standby. People have always lurked in the background of their exes' lives, asking mutual friends what they are up to. By giving every single bad behavior a catchy, branded, viral name, are we somehow normalizing it?
That's a great question.
Are we providing people with a built-in excuse to treat each other poorly because, oh, well, I wasn't being cruel, I was just monkey branching it. It's a trend everyone is doing.
That is the double-edged sword of this entire lexicon, and it raises a critical question about personal accountability. When you wrap bad behavior in clever internet slang, it distances the perpetrator from the visceral emotional harm they are causing another human being.
It turns it into a meme.
It turns a painful betrayal or a cowardly exit into a meme, exactly. So yes, while the naming convention provides a protective shield of irony and understanding for the victim, it simultaneously provides a massive shield of rationalization for the person doing the harm.
It is a brilliant observation. The slang is both armor and an alibi. So we have this incredible dichotomy. We have the fiercely earnest, wholesome side with freak matching and chormance, and we have the deeply anxious, toxic side with shrekking and orbiting.
It's a lot to navigate.
I want to bring this theoretical discussion back down to the hard numbers. Let's look at the data to see how this highly individualized, unfiltered era of dating is actually shaking out for people. Are they finding connection?
The behavioral data paints a picture of a generation that is actually remarkably earnest, despite the cynical vocabulary they use.
That's good to hear.
According to internal research from Match Group, an overwhelming 80% of Gen Z singles report that they still firmly believe in finding true, lasting love.
80%.
They haven't abandoned the concept of deep partnership. They simply refuse to compromise their individuality to achieve it. Furthermore, 81% explicitly state that they want to move slowly when getting to know a romantic interest.
They want to take their time.
They are intentionally prioritizing emotional safety, shared values, and mutual understanding over the quick, superficial milestones of previous generations.
And what about the freak matching philosophy specifically? Is leaning into your eccentricities actually translating to higher success rates on these platforms?
It undeniably is. Plenty of Fish conducted a massive survey of over 5,200 active users, and a staggering 39% reported that they successfully bonded with a match specifically over a shared, highly niche quirk or obscure interest.
39%, wow.
And Viber's recent State of Modern Dating report explicitly concluded that authenticity is now the ultimate algorithm superpower.
A superpower. I love that.
Their data shows that users who create unedited, radically honest profiles that highlight their bizarre hobbies, their unfiltered opinions, and their authentic quirks, consistently receive the highest volume of quality engagement.
That is incredibly validating. It proves that my theory about freak matching being an efficiency hack is actually playing out in the real world. Putting your true, unvarnished self out there actively works to draw in the right people.
It absolutely works to get you in the door. And this data aligns perfectly with what sociologists in Time's Life refer to as the law of complementarity.
The law of complementarity, what's that?
The foundational idea here is that opposite or highly specific qualities don't necessarily cause friction. Rather, they complete one another in an emotionally mature, functioning relationship. Chaos and calm, introversion and extroversion, vulnerability and stoicism.
Like puzzle pieces.
Exactly. You don't need to find a carbon copy of yourself. You need to find someone whose unique energy architecture balances and supports yours. However...
Oh, I hear a however. This brings us to the critical warning from the psychological experts in our research, doesn't it?
It does. We have to unpack the inherent psychological trap of the freak matching era.
Let's get into it. What is the trap?
The trap is a phenomenon that relationship therapists Elena Vance, Marcus Vance, and Dr. Elena Torres consistently warn against. They refer to it as the illusion of intimacy.
The illusion of intimacy. Break down the mechanics of how that illusion happens in the context of matching freaks.
It happens because finding someone who perfectly aligns with your hyper-specific, obscure quirks can essentially trick your brain's neurochemistry into believing you have established a profound, foundational emotional connection, when in reality you haven't.
It's a false sense of depth.
Marcus Vance articulates this beautifully. Finding a partner who shares your chaotic, dark sense of humor, or your intense obsession with collecting vintage taxidermy, or your habit of staying awake until 4 a.m. debating philosophy, absolutely gets you in the door.
It's a great icebreaker.
It makes the initial honeymoon phase of dating delightfully fun and highly validating. But that shared quirk is not a substitute for actual emotional literacy.
I see. You are mistaking a shared hyperfixation for shared character.
Precisely. Dr. Torres puts it bluntly, don't mistake a shared quirk for shared character. You might both find incredible joy in eating cold takeout in bed while watching 4-hour documentaries on the fall of the Roman Empire, and that is a lovely shared activity.
Sure.
But that mutual hobby tells you absolutely nothing about how this person will react when you suddenly lose your job and the rent is due.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you how they navigate conflict resolution when your family dynamics clash.
Right.
It doesn't tell you if they possess the baseline emotional regulation required to sit with you through the heavy, dark, inevitable tragedies of real life.
This connects directly to another viral relationship trend I kept seeing in the cultural data, the orange peel theory. It's a perfect example of this exact dynamic.
Yes, the orange peel theory. This is a pop therapy metric that exploded online.
Right?
The premise is a microtest. You ask your partner to bring you an orange from the kitchen. The test is to see if they take the time to peel the orange for you, unprompted, before handing it to you.
If they do.
If they peel it, it is supposed to be definitive proof that they deeply care for you and are intuitively willing to perform small, selfless acts of service.
Right. And while that sounds incredibly sweet and romantic on the surface, I want to aggressively push back on this entire methodology of testing a partner.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the orange peel theory. Think about the low-stakes Charmans tests. Think about the entire philosophy of testing if someone matches your freak. Aren't all of these micro-tests, these little behavioral traps, just a highly elaborate, anxiety-driven way to avoid the hard, terrifying work of actual direct communication?
If we connect this back to the broader picture of an isolated, anxious generation, you are entirely correct. Instead of looking a partner in the eye, being genuinely vulnerable and saying, I am feeling insecure today and I need to know that you are willing to support me through a difficult time.
Right, instead of just saying that.
Instead, you hand them a citrus fruit and secretly, silently judge their response based on an arbitrary internet metric. It is a massive avoidance strategy masquerading as psychological insight.
It is. It is cowardice disguised as standard setting. And it makes me want to throw a challenge out to you, the listener, right now as you navigate your own relationships.
What's the challenge?
Look at your approach to dating or your current partnership. Are you actually looking for a true partner? Meaning, are you looking for a separate, autonomous human being who will challenge your blind spots, support your weaknesses, and force you to grow through the inevitable friction of combining two lives?
That's the hard stuff.
It is. Or, if you are being brutally honest, are you just looking for an echo chamber for your own habits? Are you desperately searching for someone who simply validates all of your eccentricities so that you never have to do the uncomfortable, exhausting work of compromising, evolving, or changing?
That's a tough question to ask yourself.
Because here's the harsh reality.
Yeah.
If you only ever date someone who perfectly, seamlessly matches your freak, you might never be forced to grow beyond it.
That is a profound and necessary point. The ultimate goal of a long-term relationship shouldn't just be parallel play. Two people sitting in the same room, in silence, doing their own thing without disturbing each other.
That's just having a roommate.
A real partnership requires intersection. It requires the heat and friction of two entirely different people figuring out how to build a unified life. The danger of this freak match era is that we become so intensely protective of our highly individualized, unedited quirks that we lose the fundamental human ability to compromise.
Let's tie all these threads together, because we have mapped out a massive generational shift today. We started by looking at the rigid, standardized assembly line of mid-century marriage, the mandatory progression of love, marriage, and the baby carriage.
Right, the checklist.
We watched that system completely collapse under the weight of economic pressure and the rise of expressive individualism, giving way to a decade of highly polished, curated, incredibly stressful performance art on millennial dating apps.
The LinkedIn era of dating.
Exactly. And now, as a direct reaction to that burnout, we have arrived in this wonderfully weird, highly anxious, radically honest new era.
An era entirely defined by the search for a freak match, by running mundane grocery store errands as a romantic overture, by lingering in libraries hoping for a cinematic offline encounter, and by a cynical lexicon that attempts to categorize every single toxic micro-interaction the internet can dream up.
It is a generation that absolutely refuses to shrink themselves to be considered dateable. They are drawing a line in the sand and demanding that their full, unedited, slightly unhinged selves be accepted from the very first interaction.
That's a bold stance.
And while that philosophy carries the very real risk of falling for the illusion of intimacy, it is also undeniably incredibly liberating.
Right.
But before we sign off, I know you have one final thread to pull on.
I do.
Something that wasn't explicitly spelled out in the relationship data, but feels like the inevitable, logical next step for this massive cultural shift.
Yes. I want to leave everyone listening with a final provocative thought to chew on. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing how young adults are aggressively applying the zero-mask, unedited philosophy to their romantic and platonic lives.
Right.
They are demanding radical authenticity in their private intimacy. But what happens when this exact same generation inevitably brings this exact same philosophy into the professional world?
Oh, wow. That changes the entire landscape.
Think about the implications. If freak matching and zero-mask authenticity become the new baseline standard for human connection, how long until it becomes the new standard for corporate culture?
That's a wild thought.
What happens to traditional hiring practices, to HR departments, to team building, when a new workforce absolutely refuses to perform the sanitized, professional, networking event version of themselves?
No more corporate masking.
Can society, and more specifically our highly structured economy, actually function efficiently if we all collectively stop performing and demand to be accepted with our weirdest, most unvarnished quirks on full display in the boardroom?
That is a massive, slightly terrifying question. If the mid-century assembly line is truly dead in our personal lives, maybe the polished, performative corporate ladder is the next institution to fall.
It's definitely a possibility.
It is definitely something to seriously mull over the next time you are sitting in a meeting. But for now, we will have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the messy, authentic world of modern romance.
It's been fascinating.
We encourage you to embrace your own niche hyperfixations. Beware of anyone attempting to Shrek you or orbit your social media. And just remember, while shared oddities are a fantastic, highly efficient way to start a conversation, it is actual tested character that makes love last.
So true.
Put down the internet metrics, peel your own oranges, have the hard, direct conversations, and we will see you next time.
Welcome to Speed Mingle.
Where making real connections happens in
Stream,
seconds.
swipe, socialize. Your ultimate connection network.
Jump in now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Speed Mingle Network.